evening and welcome. You're watching Magic Bricks, now India's first property channel. This is the Urban Debate. I'm Faye D'Souza. Let's take a look at what's making headlines today. The Mumbai development plan at the DP has been delayed again. Sources in the civic body BMC do not expect the plan to be ready for rollout before August this year. This delay comes after planners were granted a third extension by the state government. That's a Magic Bricks Now exclusive. About 4,000 of the 1.33 lakh applicants get keys to their MADA homes in Mumbai. The state government pledges to bridge that massive gap between demand and supply and build another 2 lakh affordable homes over the next 2 years. All eyes on Suresh Prabhu as he gets set to announce the rail budget on February 25th. Hopes are high that this time Mumbaikars will get a green light for the Mumbai-Ahmedabad bullet train and the much-needed revamp of Mumbai's lifeline for local trains. All right, so tell me if this doesn't worry you. If you spend 4 hours a day commuting to work, which is 2 hours one way, that's more than 1,200 hours of your life spent at the end of the year sitting in traffic, inhaling pollution and dealing with the noise. Now, the government has tested the patience of the average urban citizen for long enough. People are tired and they want governments to act and act now. Today on the Urban Debate, we find out if Finance Minister's urban development allocation in the upcoming budget will actually in any way throw us a lifeline for urban Indians in Mumbai, in Delhi, in Bangalore, in Pune, in Chennai, who are suffering because of bad urban planning, the lack of planning, really, bad traffic, badly managed roads, and of course, a complete lack in the way our public transport is being planned. Will there be a solution here for something as simple as your commute to office and back every day? Joining me in the studio, P.K. Das, he's an architect at P.K. Das Associates and an urban planner. Jaijit Bhattacharya, partner, infrastructure and government services at KPMG India. Ashwini Kumar, he's the chief operating officer at Nitesh Estates. Jayashree Group, head of content and research at magicbricks.com. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us on this very, very important show. P.K. Das, I'll come to you first. I'm also going to open up the phone lines for any of our viewers who want to pick up the phone and join the conversation to voice any sort of discontentment you are having as far as urban planning is concerned. P.K. Das, first question to you. We saw an allocation of 70,000 crore rupees to infrastructure in last year's budget, 42,000 crore rupees to highways, if I'm not mistaken, and another about 14,000 crore rupees to roads. Now, none of this specifically means urban planning or urban development. Do you think the situation is bad enough now for the central government to sort of take notice?
Yeah, absolutely. The way you explained it, unfortunately, cities are projectized. We see making of cities as a process of identifying certain projects, and often they're disparate and even conflicting with one another. There's no coherence. So what is the key issue really is the absence of planning and design in the making of cities. And that has been really one of the biggest issues. And we're hoping that this government and in this budget does enough to sort of put this on the mainstream.
Right. You know, I'm going to bring in Ashwini Kumar here because there's a massive real estate angle, Ashwini. One is, of course, the fact that we keep asking for affordable homes. Now, if someone's going to build an affordable home where the land is actually affordable, then the commute needs to sort of come into place because we need to have high-speed links between the peripheries and the centers of the city where we work. The way things are designed right now, especially in Bangalore, in places like Whitefield, people are just exhausted when they get into work because the commute has been that taxing. Now, if the government is simply looking at productivity, this is not the way to go, is it?
Absolutely. When we are looking at affordable homes are really going to be at the periphery or beyond the periphery of the cities. In fact, you know, Whitefield has become pretty much inside, but affordable homes are going to be even further away into the periphery. And that's a place where infrastructure has not developed at all. So if we really want to grow if we really want to cater to the urban population and the ever increasing urban population, which is growing at a very rapid rate, then of course the big problem that we have to attack is how do we make the infrastructure available at those peripheral locations in the cities. And I can tell you that that's something which is not happening adequately at all in Bangalore right now.
PK Das, this is the question. Obviously, before Whitefield happened, and when I grew up in Bangalore, Whitefield was a place we went to for picnics. Now, someone obviously handed out enough permits for IT companies to put up these massive places of work, assuming where people will travel in and out. That someone did not consider how these people would travel in and out. The same is the case with Lower Parel. The same is the case with various parts of our national capital. Obviously, there's not enough thinking going on here.
No, absolutely. I mean, mobility is, of course, a key issue, as you brought up. But that's not going to be solving the problem of housing, nor the production of affordable housing. You see, I completely disagree with the fact that affordable housing should be in the periphery of cities, and then you build infrastructure to cater to them. They can't be pushed aside. It has to be an integral part of the main city area. And
so how would that work? How would that work?
We presented many solutions. For example, to give you one quick one, in Mumbai, we've said that in the new development plan, two things to be done across the country. One, in the development plan of cities, you reserve adequate land exclusively for affordable housing, not just branded as housing, which is then sort of captivated by the market forces. Second, in Mumbai, which we have suggested, which is true.
Which is a salt pan land?
No, not at all. I'm against that. Is to declare slum land reserved for affordable housing, which means when you develop slums land or redevelop slums, you don't give away 50% of that towards high-income housing or commercial development, but reserve those for affordable housing.
How do you enforce something like that?
And an incredible calculation. We're catering to almost twice the number of housing units than can be produced for Mumbai, for example. And this would be great because the land is owned by the government.
This has happened in the past, and we've seen those lands being misused, and then we've had very high-end construction come up on those lands.
But that's what I'm saying. But once there is a reservation of slum land for affordable housing exclusively,
right,
then what happens is after rehabilitation of the existing slum dwellers, the balance FAR or the construction potential is then utilized only for affordable housing and not for high-end housing. And you know that in most cities, high-end housing is lying surplus, locked up, etc., and let the market continue to produce for them.
Jaijit Bhattacharya, is this a possibility that we'll actually have affordable housing coming up inside of the cities? A lot of times what happens when we talk about slum rehabilitation, the bigger slums is that one building comes up, and the rest of it tends to be high-end housing. So while you rehabilitate the people from that specific slum, you're not creating any more supply of affordable housing. The affordable housing has to come up in the peripheries of the cities. Is that a possibility? And do you think the finance minister has room in this budget somehow to push affordable housing?
A couple of issues over here. First is that slum rehabilitation is a separate issue, and affordable housing is a separate issue altogether. The reason is this: you can do some slum rehabilitation and you can probably put them into affordable housing. And if you put them away from their work, they will leave their house and then come back and create the slums, which is exactly what has been happening. So you have to take slums and develop in situ accommodation, which needs to be affordable housing, or may even be free housing for that matter, because it can be subsidized and cross-subsidized by other kinds of developments. But the whole issue of slum rehabilitation is a completely different issue. Now, if you come to affordable housing, we cannot afford to create ghettos. We cannot be having all the affordable housing in one place or in the periphery and so on. It needs to be mixed housing, otherwise you'll end up having no community feeling within a city. We'll have ghettos with very rich people staying in one place and very poor people staying in one place.
Jaijit, if the price of land is what it is in most of our cities, and in any city, if you consider Bangalore or or Pune or Mumbai for that matter, and Delhi, the main factor of constructing affordable housing is what the land costs. And if the land costs what it does, how will you use your cities? How will you create affordable housing within your cities?
The reason is very simple, is because if you look at any high-end place, be it New Delhi Municipal Corporation, which is where I'm helping out the municipality in putting the smart city plan, within those high-value land there is slums available. There are 25 JJ clusters in the NDMC area. Now, either we use brute force and we take them out, or we look at a way of rehabilitating them at that place, and we therefore use that land to both rehabilitate these workers, because typically the slum inhabitants are those who provide certain kinds of service to that city without which the city cannot function and survive, and cohabitate the high-end property along with it, which is why completely nominating these areas as affordable housing areas is also not possible, precisely for the reason that you mentioned, that we cannot afford to give away the entire land for only affordable housing.
Fine, all right. Jaijit, that I buy that point, which is what's happening normally even now. If there is a slum that's being rehabilitated, the slum residents will receive a new building. The rest of it goes towards high-end construction. Right. So where is the fresh supply of affordable housing? What you've done is given people who already live there a better building to live in. But where are you creating the fresh supply of affordable housing? That's only happening at the peripheries. Jaishree Kurup, this is something you've studied with the Housing Ministry. Tell us what you found.
Faye, the biggest problem here is that we're talking about one unit. I'm sorry.
Ashwini, one second. I'm going to go to Jaishree first. Jaishree, go ahead.
Okay. If you create one tower for the as affordable housing, and you're talking about slum rehabilitation, and then the rest of it, normally the logic is that you're cross-subsidizing the slum rehabilitation by selling it off for high-end housing, and that's normally premium housing. But the point is that economics show that if for every one housing unit, premium housing unit, you need at least 5 other affordable housing units to service them, the drivers, the cooks, the maids, and so on. So actually, we are not studying urban economics. We're talking about just the real estate dynamics there. World over, there is a city redevelopment plan. Take Delhi, old areas of Delhi which were developed by DDA. You used an FAR that was present at those times, and after 20, 30, 40 years, you haven't touched those areas. Those areas still have, many of them have double-story housing, which is completely out of sync with today's requirement. You need constant redevelopment of cities where you can replan those areas. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with places where there is overbuilding of whatever there is, and the rest of the city does not get used. One other thing is that you're talking about slum redevelopment, but affordable housing is not necessarily slums at all. The government itself has included LIGs, which means that anybody with a family income of up to 6 lakhs. There are students here, there are young professionals who come into cities to work. They need safe, respectable, good, well-connected housing too. So it's not a question of rehabilitating the slum dwellers. There is a lot more affordable housing that is required within the cities, and that is a case of planning that is required.
Go ahead.
I think a small point of clarification here. The slums redevelopment is a means towards achieving more affordable housing. That's the point I was making. In the sense that after you see what is happening in Maharashtra, as it started here, and then aped by many other cities and states, is a terrible example of redevelopment of slums land. What is happening is slums are being squeezed into, the slum dwellers are being squeezed into 20-30% of the land, and the rest is being taken away. So if you produce the balance area, you reserve the balance area of land for affordable housing, then, and please remember that this land is actually free land because it's owned by the government. Even though it's private land, under the Act, it has to be pledged to the government. So government has a sort of duty to impose conditions on it.
That's a fair point. I want to refocus this debate back on infrastructure right now. I want to remind you that the government on December 28, 2015 set up a national investment and infrastructure fund of 40,000 crore rupees meant for infrastructure projects and reviving the stalled infrastructure projects. Now, we don't know how much of this has actually been spent and what it's been spent on, but the need right now is for fast and efficient urban infrastructure and mostly of commuting infrastructure. So rapid transport and public transport, which we're not seeing enough about. Ashwini Kumar, I'm going to bring you in here because you wanted to say something, I know, when we were talking about affordable housing. One is obviously the need for affordable housing. The other point is decongesting our cities. Go ahead.
Yes, what I was saying is that one viable option in many cities, and I can say certainly is true for Bangalore, if you leave it to the market forces, then it's really the affordable housing will go away to the periphery of the city. But indeed, that's not the best solution. But within the city, you have a lot of land which is actually belonging to the government, which is belonging to the military organizations, which is belonging to the public sector undertakings, which are not fully utilized, or let's say optimally utilized. And if we are able to unlock some of those, then that can be certainly a very good option which can be thrown in many of the cities. And very certainly this would be a good option for a city like Bangalore.
I don't know how many takers there would be to the idea of using up the defense land or the army land that's available in cities like Bangalore. Pune, for example, has a lot of prime land that still belongs to the defense forces. Jaijit, do you think that's a possibility, that we might actually be able to mobilize that land?
I don't think so. Not the defense land.
You can mobilize that land and you can come out with many other solutions, but that's not a holistic planning. You will use up that land and then what? You will still have the problem of 2 hours of commute. Probably it will become a 3-hour commute. You'll still have shortage of water. You can't invent water out of thin air. And therefore, you can't have random densification of cities without looking at the utilities coming in, the transportation issue coming in, energy being sufficient for that city. So those are few fundamental points that has to be looked at before we look at further densification of the cities. Now, as it is, the Indian cities are super dense by any standards. And if you're looking at these lands being procured or being taken care of, it will be better put to use if they are kept as open lands for community usage. None of our cities have a community feeling to it, and you can't end up having humans living in a whole range of dense concrete jungle. Yes, affordable housing is an issue, but it has to be looked at a larger perspective. And as the lady was mentioning, we need to.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Jaijit. I'm a citizen of the city of Mumbai. I've grown up in Bangalore. I've lived in most of the big cities in this country. And the way things are stacked right now, given the amount of time we have to spend in our cars getting to work, given the abysmal state of our roads, the air pollution, the water pollution, it's not so much a sense of community and a sense of well-being that people care about. If I could live 5 minutes away from where I work, I'd take that deal irrespective of the community that you're offering me.
That's precisely what well-being is. That's precisely my point. That's what well-being is. Because if you can travel in 5 minutes to your home or to your office, then that's well-being. And therefore, that needs to be planned. You cannot go ahead.
Go ahead, Jaishri, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to give the example of Uttam Nagar in Delhi. Uttam Nagar was a lower middle class resettlement colony that was in the far west in Delhi. But what really happened was when the metro came, 2 big metro stations, it was flanked by 2 big metro stations. Suddenly the market forces redeveloped that entire area. Had it been planned, you would have been planning for water, power, better roads and so on. What really happened was, while the metro was planned and there was a 5-year period when the metro was being constructed and everybody knew that along the metro there would be more densification required, they didn't plan it. The city has planned for itself. So you have rampant overbuilding in that locality, and it is it is in demand to such an extent that it actually swung our property index in 1 quarter. So what we're really seeing is that anywhere where there is a transport infrastructure, there is going to be more demand and people are going to jump into those areas and there will be overbuilding. Why not give a plan for it and give it to them now, even before that?
All right, so desperate need for urban planning.
And I'll just take up that point, if I can be allowed to just take up that point.
All right, Jaijit.
And which is why we need to develop the transportation to the periphery and good transportation to the periphery, because the cities needs to expand. And if we don't put the transportation infrastructure to the periphery, you will not have the housing developing and you will not have the cities growing. You don't agree
that moving transport to the periphery is the solution?
No, of course, you have to link the periphery with transport. That's not the point. I was talking about in reference to moving affordable housing only to the periphery, which Jaijit agreed is not really, or maybe the other speaker said is not really a solution to city making. But I would like to pick up on the point that Jaijit earlier said, and I completely endorse, that public spaces or open spaces ought to be the basis of city planning. Because that in fact provides the quality of life and environment that we're aspiring to achieve in urbanization and city making.
But where are the public places? I mean, I'd invite any of the viewers to pick up the phone and call us about this. Obviously, we're aware of how nightmarish our commutes are in our cities. But But public spaces, where are the children learning to ride their bicycles? Where are they able to play cricket anymore? How many schools in the city of Mumbai actually have playgrounds? Where are the public spaces? And they're getting swallowed up on a daily basis. There are cases in court right now where there are builders building on playgrounds. Yeah. This is the kind of state we're in. So there has to be a collective conscience, at least, about what we're doing with public spaces and how we're planning our cities going forward.
The smaller the units, the more green area you need. If your internal space is small, you need more public spaces so that there is less urban stress. This is what planners
balance
talk
the
about.
Densities too. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. But you see, the point is very interesting. You see, open spaces are available. It's a question of recognizing and integrating them into the planning process.
Right.
We are overdriven by this build more syndrome in our cities.
Right.
And we consider cities as an opportunity to just build more at any cost, even if it's on open spaces or on natural areas, like land filling salt pains or destroying mangroves, etc. But we've shown through the Open Mumbai plan here, for example, that if you actually do planning on the basis of public spaces or open spaces and create an integrated open spaces network, which really reflects in terms of social networking in cities, then we achieve a far better life quality of life.
There's a very interesting trend. There's a very interesting trend in the city of Bangalore. Perhaps Ashwini Kumar can weigh in on it. The fact that developers are taking up public spaces around their developments. So we saw Embassy, for example, has taken up the air-conditioned walkway around the Manyata Tech Park. Prestige Estates has taken up Alsur Lake that they're planning on cleaning up and making into a public space that will have a jogging ramp or a walking ramp, things like that, projects like that where public and private come together to look after our, our public spaces. Jakshay Shah joins us now from Ahmedabad. Jakshay, thanks for joining us. Obviously, Ahmedabad, good evening, we've noticed has taken up public spaces very, very clearly. And we know again that there are a lot of examples of public-private partnerships happening in the city of Ahmedabad. Tell us how that's impacted the real estate market.
So real estate market, I think it's not a sunny side, as we all know, but we are very, very hopeful. I think we are in a phase of a bottom-out position. Let's hope for the better budget, I think, the comprehensive budget, and of course a good monsoon.
When you say comprehensive budget, Jakshay, are you expecting, a specific allocation for urban planning, for urban development? We know that this is a government that's taking urban planning quite seriously, but tell us what the expectation is from within the developer community.
We are taking a three-way reforms. One is the land reforms. So we are talking about the urban reforms, land reforms. The maximum optimization of the land, of course, that we all know. How to reduce the cost of the affordable housing. Number one. Number two is the bank reforms. See, the bottleneck is the finance to this sector. We are not talking about any luxury segment. We are not talking about the commercial house. We are only talking about the affordable housing. Unless and until government patronize or maybe have a catalyst to provide a finance in the system for the affordable housing, I don't think we can achieve the goal of housing for all by 2022, number two. And number three, the administration reforms. I think almost 30 to 40% price when we start a project. When we complete project to greenfield and to start project, it is already 30 to 40% burden on the project. So we need a single window system. We need online approval. I think that way we can save at least 20-25% of the cost.
Jakshay, I'm going to very quickly ask you this question. Let's assume in an ideal world, you get your land reforms, you get your, your affordable housing, reform in terms of finance and in terms of the permissions that you need. What guarantee is there that developers will pass on that benefit then to consumers? It's a tough market. Nothing's going to stop you from absorbing those costs.
We are in an open market. It's not somebody commodity. It's not something a commodity. It's a real estate. You can't dictate your term. You can see since the 3 years when there is available of stock enough, then if we can breach this imperfection market in the housing, I think that they will come. That will be a buyer's market. Already is a buyer's market. There is available of enough stock. Then who will command the price? Let me know. I think there's a three-way that the government has to push by the infrastructure, by the better living, the sustainable growth, and maybe a blue and green infrastructure. We are only talking about the blue and green infrastructure. And the banks are enough to give push and help and encourage the affordable housing industry. The consumer will come. Of course, why not?
Okay, so an open market is a good way to expect the the real estate industry to pass on all of those benefits as and when they're given to them. Ashwini Kumar, weigh in on that. Is this what you're also looking forward to, in easier sort of access to funding, land reforms, the ability
Absolutely.
for better clearances to build affordable housing?
Absolutely. I think we should allow the market forces to play and not really worry whether the developer is going to pass on the benefits to their customers. I think the competitive forces are fairly strong. In a city like Bangalore itself, I would say probably there are more than 200 developers and all of them jostling for their market share. Right now, however, the way that the taxes are, the availability of the land, it just does not make any economic sense. So once those issues are fixed, and related with funding, related with the taxation, the tax benefits which can go to the end consumer, or the amount of taxes which are applicable on real estate. If you add up, let's say, the VAT, the service tax, the stamp duties, the registration fees, the labor cess, and all the other charges which the government levies on you at the time of approvals, they all come into a significant amount. So those are the ones which will really have to be looked by the government and brought it down to a point where it becomes affordable and where there is a certain amount of profit that the developer can make. Then allow the market forces to play in, and then I think it can work.
If I may, but
yes,
I completely disagree with this theory and this ideology.
That allow the market forces to
no,
that,
in
is
fact,
that what you did?
Since post-1991, the year of liberalization, till today, we have not produced any affordable housing.
But why is that? Why haven't we produced
one second,
any affordable
because
housing?
we pledged to privatization and opened up the markets. It did not produce. So I think we have to halt here. The state would have to intervene, would have to play a dominant role in the social welfare measures, including public housing, for which it would have to designate land. It can't just leave it to the open market and the market forces to produce them.
What Jakshay and Ashwini Kumar are saying right now is give us clearer and easy clearances, allow us funding for land right now, which the industry doesn't have. Make it simpler and easier for us to build affordable housing, and we'll pass on that benefit because it's an open market.
Let's not mix up the issue of mechanics versus policy. Let's not mix up the mechanics versus the policy.
That's what I
mean, there are completely two different things. Let's not throw the baby out of the bath and the bathwater out.
Says it will not happen either. Why not,
being discussed, just adding to what was being discussed, if we let the market forces take over, then you will not have any affordable housing in the middle of the city. You will not even have it in the periphery of the city. And if not most, in fact, all the housing will be taken over by the rich. That will lead to an implosion of the city per se.
We've seen that happen. We've seen that happen all over Mumbai. Jakshay Shah, you want to defend that? The other panelists are saying basically if you open up the market, there's no reason why anybody will build any affordable housing. It will all be premium.
See, we are not thinking about the ecosystem.
No, you need to open up the market and at the same time make the
Ashwini
other
Kumar,
policy decisions, make the availability of the land, allow the taxation.
Okay, Ashwini Kumar, I want to give Jakshay Shah the opportunity to answer first. Jakshay, go ahead.
See, there should be an ecosystem. Ecosystem, state governments actually demand, and I think they plan for next 10 years, like Gujarat government, and they've decided 10 years development plan. They have the higher FAR along the corridor of the BRTS and metro. Like we are in now a world of the metro cities. Now government is also pushing smart cities. See, this land is available, and the FAR and FSI is available enough to construct a vertical buildings, and that the portion of the land, portion of the FSI, and the burden of the FSI on the housing price will be very much decreased. Number one. Number two,
that's not correct in planning terms. That's completely a misnomer.
Go ahead, PK. One second, Jakshay. PK,
it's a planning misnomer. That high-rise produces or gives you more opportunity for more houses.
So what's
that is the question
then?
of density. I think one of our speakers brought up, or a discussion's brought up. I think we have to be careful. It's not just about building more. It's about a density and its control in order to achieve a minimum standard and quality of life and environment. I think these are the indexes.
I'll back that. I really need to jump in here and tell you that we've been studying city after city, and I think during this period, the only one city stood out for us, one state stood out, which was Haryana. Haryana, in the middle of a huge recession, they came up with an affordable housing policy. May I just speak?
Yeah, Jaishri, let's just finish. Jaishri, I want to hear what Jaishri has to say. Go ahead. Haryana had an affordable housing policy.
It created a
example. Look at Hyderabad. Hyderabad has unlimited FSI. I have not seen since the 10-20 years the price is so stabilized. There is no boom or nothing earlier.
I'd like to hear Jaishri.
Jagshay, okay, that's fair, but Hyderabad also has a very, very weak market and a government right now that's trying to build up that state in the face of what's just been two states that split up. So Hyderabad can't be taken as a plain example, but I want Jaishri to finish the point she was saying. Give me 1 second. Jaishri Kurup, go ahead.
The Haryana government in Gurgaon, I'd like to finish this point. In Haryana, they created 30 new sectors and called it Master Plan 2031. They took a peripheral area of the city and master planned it and allowed affordable housing to come up there. And it was necessary that you had to hold the cap at 4,000 rupees. You had to deliver on time, and it was by draw of lots. The market has, in a market that was not moving at all, the affordable housing market is moving very well. Policy plus planning plus understanding the consumer needs seems to work.
May I add a point to Jaishri?
Okay, go ahead.
Just a word of caution. Just a word of caution that housing or affordable housing is not a game of numbers merely of housing units.
I want to say this. Okay, if we look at just adding infrastructure and opening up the market, let's take the city of Mumbai, where we had Navi Mumbai come up, we had Thane come up, Vasai Virar come up, where the infrastructure came in. And then after that, by the time the infrastructure is ready, those homes are no longer affordable. Thane is selling 1 bedroom at 1 crore rupees. It's a ridiculous price. That is an hour and a half outside of any of the business districts. Now, what happens if you just leave it to open market? It becomes unaffordable. Jaijit Bhattacharya.
At this point, I just want to make one point, is that we are kind of aligning the concept of housing for all with house ownership for all, and that's where the critical issue is coming. In the Thane example that you're giving, what is the rental of that house? I'm pretty sure the rental is not aligned to the price of that 1 bedroom house that you're talking about.
That's true.
And therefore the focus should be on housing and not house ownership. And if the rental is low, then so be it. Let other people buy it and rent it out. And as long as people get access to housing through low rentals, that should be good enough. The end outcome is not the pricing of the real estate, but it's the fact that people should have a house to live in. It can be a rental house, it can be a low-cost house, it can be any other house.
May I just add a point?
Go ahead.
You see, I would just like to suggest that affordable housing, or any housing for that matter, is not just a game of numbers or producing numbers of housing units. Housing must include, affordable housing in particular, must include affordable and accessible amenities. Which is essentially about healthcare and education. And they have to be affordable and accessible, and an integral aspect of the housing.
So basically you're saying there's no point in building...
That contributes to the quality of life and human development.
So there's no point in building these affordable houses outside of the city if there's no social infrastructure to go with it, if we don't have the schools, the hospitals, the malls...
Anywhere for that matter.
Anywhere for that matter. Ashwini Kumar, do you want to weigh in on this? You've been silent for most of this conversation. Your point that opening it up and just letting market forces decide prices has not worked in any of our cities up till now. Give me one example where market forces have kept affordable housing affordable.
No, I think that has to be compensated. That has to be, work in tandem with the changes in the government policies. What the government has to do is make the funds available, look around the incentives, look at the taxation, which can lower the cost for the end consumer finally. And of course, we talked about the infrastructure, add the infrastructure component there. Then of course, you can have a solution. Then of course, you can leave it to the market forces. When we are talking about leaving it to the market forces, the other option is that the government does it. Is the government going to be able to do it better? One could say that not necessarily. So what I am saying is, and I'm a strong votary of it, if you are able to make the conditions such that it becomes a viable business proposition for any developer, then if you have got it to that point, then of course you leave it to the market forces. Otherwise, leaving it to the market forces actually will be a zero game. No, there'll be no takers.
Aren't we diverting from the key?
And that is what is happening right now.
All right, 1 second. PK Das, go ahead.
Aren't we actually diverting from the key question of housing, and that is land? And I think government's primary responsibility now is to prepare land use plans and development plans of cities where it confirms land reservations for social demands,
but
like housing,
okay, let's be honest,
like amenities, like other things which are essential.
PK Das, we started this show with a headline that said that the Mumbai DP is delayed again. The city has gone a couple of years without a development plan, and we seem to have a municipal corporation that's unable to make a plan that's convincing. So now here you are telling us that we should be able to, allocate affordable housing land within our development plan. Is that actually something that might play out?
It's failed to do so because it got caught between the developers and social objectives, development objectives.
Okay.
If it has a clear vision for social development objectives, it would have prepared a development plan that confirms to land requirements as required for housing demands in Mumbai, or amenities demands in Mumbai. That's where it got mixed up, and that's where public rose and brought it down.
All right, this is what I want. I want to play out something for all of our panelists right now. If I want you to hear this. This is what home buyers in our urban centers want from the upcoming budget, which means this was what they want in general. So we went out and we actually spoke to people on the street and asked them what they wanted in the area of housing. Listen to what they had to say.
चीटर बिल्डर्स काफ़ी एंटर हो गए हैं मार्केट में, उनकी वजह से जनरल बिल्डर परेशान हो रहे हैं। लोगों को घर खरीदने में बड़ा शक रहता है कि कहाँ से लें, क्या पता धोखा ना हो जाए। तो अगर ऐसा कोई बिल आता है जो कंज्यूमर के भी फेवर में हो और बिल्डर के भी फेवर में हो, जिससे एक विश्वास जगे और गवर्नमेंट को भी रेवेन्यू आए और लोग अपना घर खरीद सकें।
Every budget they're defining, we have affordability. Every policy is coming affordable housing and all, but affordable for whom is what they have to define. Like if they give houses for 60 lakh or something, it won't be affordable for a normal person. But maybe high income groups can afford it. Of course, if the salary is 1 crore, 60 lakh is nothing for them.
People are unable to buy any houses, and houses can be brought only in outskirts of Delhi, like Noida, Gurgaon, Meerut side. But the commuting problem comes again. So I think there should be some policy for the lower income group, some middle income group, or there should be some facility in outskirts of Delhi and other towns, like other smart cities coming up. So I think there should be some facilities created and some job opportunities created there itself.
Well, you heard it there. These are average citizens who are all worried about affordability of homes. They're complaining about the same thing. If I choose to buy a home that's actually within my affordable range, I'm going to have to travel really, really far away. And these voices were across the country. This is the voice generally coming in from across urban India. Now, we have massive projects that the government is considering. The Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, for example, has residential zones that are marked on it. But the problem is, we've not managed to decentralize business from our cities. We can name 4 or 5 cities in all of this country which actually contains all the economics, which is why people are moving to live here and to work here. On some level, we also need to find a way to decentralize industry, to decentralize maybe the services industry as well, move jobs outside of our cities. I'm going to bring in, Jaijit Bhattacharya here. Is there any sort of hope that the government might put this sort of infrastructure, this sort of planning on the top of their list for this union budget at least? What can we hope for from the union budget?
So clearly, I think the direction of the government was laid out in the previous budget itself, where about 100,000 crore was earmarked for both smart cities and Amrut and so on, so urban related projects. And then there was separate funding for HUPA, which is housing for all projects.
How much of that has been used, Jaijit?
Having said that, let's look at the larger issue first before we come down to the specific question.
No, Jaijit,
in the next 10 years, there will be 300 million.
How much of the last year's allocation was actually used, Jaijit?
That's a question. That's a very important question. Not significant amount has been used. From a smart city perspective, A large portion of it will get allocated by March, but it will be allocated to the municipalities through the state government, and therefore the execution will start happening in terms of April 2016.
Okay.
But having said that, the intention is clear. The intention is to build these cities and to have a well-planned city where, as you rightly pointed out, the commercial entities and the residential entities have to coexist. But having said that, I was just going to point out the larger issue, which is in the 10 years that we foresee coming, 300 million people will migrate from rural to urban areas. That's the biggest migration in the history of mankind ever. And the government can't dictate where they will be going. The government can't simply plan and assume that that plan will be followed by both the commercial organizations and the people moving in. And therefore, we'll see gravitation of many of these people who are moving in, move into the existing cities. And therefore, there has to be a plan for enlarging the existing cities, and the commercials and the land value supports that kind of a expansion. Having said that, again, there are a couple of issues that needs to be resolved. The one big issue is a funding issue. So wherever the fund is coming in from, be it the individual funds, be it private institutions, be it the government, we expect that this requires about $2 to $3 trillion in the next 6-7 years. And that's about 1.5 times the GDP of this country. Right. Where are we going to get the funds from?
Where are we going to get the funds
Related
from?
to that is the taxation issue.
Amrut, I'm looking at this. The Amrut scheme, the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, had an outlay of 48,000 crore rupees. Where has that money gone? How much of it has been used? P.K. Das?
No, I don't know about this specific thing.
Say a lot of that was used for
go ahead, Jayashree.
Planning. A lot of that, the Amrut funds, a lot of those funds were used for the first planning, so that they could apply for, so that their cities could participate. So the Amrut.
No, Jayashree, you're confusing the two. There's the Smart City Plan, which had an allocation of 50,000 crore rupees, 48,000 crore rupees on the Amrut scheme. Now, where has the money of the Amrut scheme gone?
Only about 5 to 10% of that has actually been utilized. The rest of it, because the entire scheme took a long time to play out, so a lot of that funds have not happened, have not been utilized yet, and it's expected to be to come back in this budget for the Amrut scheme. But the Smart Cities funds, a lot of the funds have been utilized. The affordable housing funds, only 20 to 30% of the funds have actually been utilized, and that also towards the end of the year, not through the year.
Right, so
if I can just come in, that's a little simplistic view. The Smart City funds has not been utilized per se. They have been provided by the central government to the municipalities. Sure. Similarly, Amrut has not been not utilized. They had also been sent to the municipalities. And therefore, it's a matter of execution. So things are not as simplistic, and things will take time. But the key question is, are milestones being followed? And the answer is yes, the milestones are being followed.
I think there is a critical
untowardly alarmed. And
there is a critical contradiction here. You see, the point is we are constantly talking about projects individually. Now, the point is, the fundamental question that I may put here, which became the subject of your discussion actually, is planning and design of cities, and who does that? The point is that even if it's private-led development or smart cities, it's the government alone who has to do the planning and design of cities. It's the private developers that are going to do their individual jobs of individual projects. Now, often we find that this is what has been breaking up our cities into disparate and contrary sort of islands or colonies. And cities are breaking up. They're being divided. They're being fragmented by these individual projects. They may be projects of excellence, but as a city, they don't become accessible to one and all. So the point is the governments would have to get back to planning and design of cities.
Right,
lay out the basis of these individual projects to be then implemented.
So let's say the central government in the urban budgets sets the tone, which in all fairness it has done over the last couple of years, and said we want to focus on urban development, we want to focus on infrastructure, we want to focus on housing. On some level, that focus and that intention, that political will needs to trickle down to local government. It needs to trickle down rightfully to municipalities, to state governments, and everybody needs to hold a candle to that same view. How do we make sure that happens? If Jaijit Bhattacharya, if you're telling me that the money has been sent down to the municipality for municipality level for the Amrut scheme, who's tracking that money? How do we know it's being spent?
If I can just make one quick point, and it's an important point, is that when you say it's gone down and the government has to plan, I think we need to define who is the government. Are we talking about the central government? Are we talking about the state government? Are we talking about the municipal mayor? Are we talking about the development authority? Or are we talking about the Jal board? Or are we talking about the Bijli distribution board or the DISCO? There are multiple authorities involved, which is where all the issues that we're talking about in terms of a comprehensive plan, a coherent execution comes to a naught, because there is no one authority even at the end of the chain. Even at the local government level, it's not the municipality which has all the powers, and that is what leads to an issue where execution is not a smooth affair, planning is not a smooth affair, and therefore we are not able to get an integrated plan and an execution of the same. And that, I think, is the first thing that needs to be addressed. We need to have a drastic change at the local governance level in terms of the structure of the government.
All right, the structure of the government is not something we can fix in the union budget. But what I want to do before we run out of time is one round of answers from each of our panelists to tell us to fix this problem, to fix the problem of bad urban planning, of long commutes, which is something that I know that a lot of urban Indians are bogged down about, the fact that they have to commute such a lot to get to their offices, the fact that roads are in such a mess and there's no accountability at the local level of government. And this is something that rightfully does bother the central government as well. If we are going to solve these problems of affordable housing and urban planning, what needs to be on the top of the list for the finance minister? Jagsai Shah, I will start with you. What would you put on the top of that list?
Number one, we should the largest horizon. The affordable housing industry should come under the infrastructure status. Number one, affordable housing should come under the priority lending from the bankers. Number three, there should be again a recall of a ATIB scheme for the affordable housing. There should be a clear definition between metro and non-metro about the size of the house. We demand from CREDAI for metro, it is 60 meters, for non-metro it should be a 90 meter, 90 square meter. We can have the interest reduction rate, that cap should be increased from 3 lakhs to 5 lakhs, and the term and the period should be increased from 3 years to 5 years. I think as a whole, if a proper comprehensive tax reforms, I think that these are not that far that we can, and just the government should think how to encourage the private developers and domestic scale.
All right. So basically, we do need to, of course, first of all, give industry status, infrastructure status to affordable housing, so it's easier to raise money to build those homes. It's easier also clearer land deals, perhaps single window clearances. Ashwini Kumar, what would you put on top of the list for the finance minister?
Well, these are certainly important, but you know, what I would say is, if we are looking at infrastructure, then it's really the transportation related infrastructure. Water is a huge crisis in many of the cities, and in Bangalore very acutely so. There are many parts of Bangalore which are not serviced by the BWSSB. There are sewage and the stormwater. Both of them mix, and that creates a huge amount of chaos, and that is polluting the entire place. This is another very important piece. So if I am to say as to what is the right kind of fix, certainly the transportation of people, the commuting related infrastructure, water, sewage, sanitation, these are the important areas as I see.
All right, P.K. Das?
Well, you know, I would like to put physical planning and design really at the top of it all. Because we have to design our cities. We have to have these individual projects that are being launched for which funds are being allocated. It's like a jigsaw puzzle that must fit into a holistic plan of a city which is aesthetically pleasing, where the quality of life is good, that they're coherent, that they're not fragmented, that they're not contrary to one another. I think we're aspiring and looking forward to building better cities for better quality of life, in which accessible amenities, healthcare, education, affordable housing must be at the core of it. Of course, in mobility is an example how planning has failed. We are again launching individual mobility plans or transportation plans as infrastructure projects, but we are not planning for an integrated mobility plan of cities, where bus, train, rail, walking, cycling, etc. are integrated into a comprehensive plan.
Can that be done in cities that are already functioning?
Absolutely. This is what I have suggested even to the Union Minister for Urban Development just last week when I met him, that can cities start mapping the data concerning these 4 aspects? Because cities also lack coherent data. They have to do the mapping, and then they have to come out with coherent plans based on these 4 or 5 factors which are critical. And these are for existing cities, not for greenfield cities.
So basically, when you make the metro trains, in which most of our cities are doing, they need to also have a bus service that feeds the metro train. So a last mile connectivity, an integrated transport system that can work all around. Jaijit, I want to come back to you here.
With public transport as the priority.
With public transport as the priority. Jaijit, what would you put on the list for the finance minister that can actually be executed in this budget?
Let me take a quick data point. The budget for City of Bombay and the budget for City of Chicago are roughly the same. So it's not a financing issue, it's not really a budget issue, it's still an execution issue. So in the budget, if the funding support to the municipalities can be linked to the outcomes, specifically the quality of outcomes, and standards such as ISO 37120 could be adhered to in terms of pollution level, in terms of economic activity, and so on and so forth. And second, there are certain tax irritants that are still there. For example, REIT, the REITs still have a taxation issue. There is a tax on the dividend that's being laid out. I think those needs to be fixed. The issue of providing credit for affordable housing is limited to only 6 lakhs at 6.5%. Now clearly 6 lakhs is not going to give anybody any house in an urban area in India, and I think those needs to be revised. So there are a bunch of taxation issues that needs to be looked at, and funding support to municipalities has to be linked to the outcome that comes from those municipalities.
All right, Jayashree Kurup, very interesting points that Jaijit brought up. What would you add to the list?
I would say that a time-bound enforcement as well. I actually agree with the master plan and, waste master plan, transport master plan, water supply master plan, so that even if you have a multiplicity of agencies, you do look at the city as a holistic, as one whole. But time-bound implementation and disincentive for not implementing it on time, because we find that even where it has been planned well, the execution is a problem. I would like to take the case of the city of Delhi. Since many of the people talked about can it be done in existing cities, Delhi NCR is actually 5 cities, and the Delhi Metro, to its credit, has actually created the high-speed transport.
Jayashree, in all fairness, a week or so ago, we did a show on this very channel where the various municipalities of Delhi were on strike. There was garbage piling up on the streets. They weren't able to have a clear conversation with the state government because they were from 2 different political parties, and they could not see eye to eye on anything. So while you can take the metro as a good example, yes, except the Delhi metro, but the rest of the city is a mess. The rest of the city is a mess.
I agree with you, but if you can create a working transport, high-speed transport link, the last mile connectivity is still an issue. It needs to be addressed, but I think somewhere the Delhi Metro has actually held the whole fabric of the NCR in one unified whole. There have been other problems, and I'm not saying that Delhi is free of any problems. However, in terms of transport, it is, despite its size, I think the metro has made it possible to commute comfortably, and even the upper classes are using the metro. So it is more or less an equalizer in the Delhi NCR, which I expect it to happen in every other city, wherever you're going to bring the metro into a functioning city.
Right. If Delhi can do it, there's no reason why any other city can't do it. And this is a great suggestion to actually link, and this is what Jaijit said, link allocations that you give to the local governments, to local municipalities based on outcome. And what we've learned over the last 1 year through the Smart City program is that if you make municipal commissioners compete against each other, that you get some fantastic results. Unfortunately, what we've seen is there have been 20 great cities that they've picked up where the commissioners and the corporations were proactive and they made fantastic plans. What about the rest of them? What about the cities that did not make the list, that do not have proactive, local governments? We're going to wind up with some cities being completely neglected then in that case. Jaijit, what would you, what sort of a solution would you have then?
Sorry, I didn't get your question. If you can just repeat the question.
What about, if you do link it to outcome, then we will have cities that do well. But what about the cities that don't have the local government with the political will to actually have outcome?
So, from a central government perspective, in a federal system that we have, there isn't much that the finance minister or the central urban development minister could do much about it. It's for the state governments to really take up that initiative and go ahead and fix things. And if they can't fix things, it's for the democracy to then respond and fix the government. The people will get the cities that they deserve because they will get the government that they deserve. And that's why we have a democracy in place, and that's the final solution. For the state governments to fix things, they need to ensure that the cities have one single point of accountability. It could be a bureaucratic appointment, and it could be a bureaucrat running a city, or it could be a mayoral appointment and a mayor elected by the city could be running the city. But that person should have, or that office should have, complete powers over all the aspects of a city, besides obviously defense and some of the sensitive issues, but in terms of power, in terms of transportation, in terms of water, grey water, dual piping, all of that should be under the control of one entity, and that is where the accountability will start happening, and that is where one can go back and then demand the outcome to happen.
All right,
without giving powers, one cannot demand the outcome to happen.
All right, so we've run out of time on this show, but it's very, very clear that during the urban budget announcement, the union budget announcement, what we're going to be focusing on is infrastructure. What is the allocation that's being given to our local governments for urban infrastructure, for urban renewal, for the Amrut scheme? That's the thing to keep an eye on. And of course, remember, every infrastructure announcement will impact the prices of real estate, and specifically residential real estate, which is why on this channel we'll be watching very, very closely. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us on this show. I'm going to put up our contact details on the screen right through this week and through the union budget announcement. We're going to be right here on Magic Bricks now to focus on housing, to focus on urban development, and to focus on your needs as a home buyer. So if you have a question, you should really get in touch and let us know how we can help you. You can reach me personally on Twitter as well. Thank you so much for watching.